Welcome to Happy Homes and Gardens. I'm your host. My name is Daphne Royse. I am a real estate broker, architecture, and interior designer. People come to Silicon Valley for technology and innovation. It is a hub for entrepreneurs. Bill Reichert is an entrepreneur, venture capitalist, author, speaker, and a mentor. Let's welcome Bill as we ask him to share his experiences with innovation, entrepreneurship, and venture capital. Hi, Bill.
Hi, Daphne. It is a pleasure and an honor to be with you here today. Thank you so much for inviting me.
Would you tell us who you are and what you do?
So, yes, I appreciate that introduction. I am an entrepreneur and a venture capitalist and an author and a mentor. I'm a husband and a father, and I'm an enthusiast and a cheerleader, among many other things. But right now, I am a general partner at Pegasus Tech Ventures. Pegasus is a global venture capital firm based here in Silicon Valley, with over $2 billion of assets under management and offices around the world. And so I get to invest in emerging technologies across many, many, many different sectors. I get to work with all sorts of entrepreneurs all over the world, and I get to work with our corporate limited partners who are multinational corporations who are looking for us to help them find strategic investment opportunities to help accelerate their innovation initiatives and their long-term growth. So that's what I get to do every day.
You have been a venture capitalist for more than 20 years.
Mm-hmm.
What are the secrets to success for us a startup?
So, well, for startup success, there are a few keys, but the number one key to success for a startup is something I don't generally hear on, at VC conferences and at startup accelerators. Most VCs say, the key to success is team, right? It's about the team. We invest in teams. And that is absolutely a critical success factor. But the number one success factor is you have got to have a compelling value proposition for your target customers. If you don't have a value proposition that makes your customers stand up and shout, it's got to make their heart beat faster. It's got to make them say, wow, that's amazing. You can do that. That's the key to success for a startup. And so, there's all of this training out there about, your business model canvas and all these sort of techniques for trying to figure out how to start up a startup. But at the core, you've got to have a compelling value proposition, and then some other things that count, really is the people around the company. And so, yes, that's team, but it's not just your co-founders. It's also the people you recruit. It's also your advisors. And I know this is very self-serving, but it's your investors. Your investors are part of the team. And that's critical to every, startup success.
You have a book and you co-host a book named Getting to Wow, Silicon Valley Pitch Secrets for Entrepreneurs. Yes. Please tell us more about your book. What motivates you to write this book?
So, yes. So I co-authored the book, Getting to Wow, Silicon Valley Pitch Secrets for Entrepreneurs, with a wonderful, wonderful person named Angelica Blendstrup, whom I've known forever and ever. And Angelica had heard me do this workshop for entrepreneurs for many years. So I developed this workshop for entrepreneurs called Getting to Wow after I became a VC. and discovered that a lot of the coaching that I had gotten as an entrepreneur and that was prevalent out there in the innovation ecosystem and the entrepreneurship training, a lot of that coaching was just plain wrong. And so that's the origin of Getting to Wow. And the sort of at the core of Getting to Wow is that a pitch is not a presentation. And we can talk about that later. But most every pitch coach is actually a presentation coach. And if a pitch is not a presentation, you're being coached the wrong way. So Angelica heard me deliver this many times. And one day she came to me and she said, "Hey, Bill, why don't we turn your workshop into a book?" And so God bless her. She twisted my arm, and so it took I think more than 2 years for us to sort of pull it all together. Basically, I was able on each of my international flights, I would carve out some time on these international flights, to write a section of the book. Eventually, we got it out, and in fact, we released it right in the middle of COVID, right? And so that added a whole nother flavor to the book. But so that was Angelica and her great help in helping me get this going. And the motivation, again, was so many things about pitches that are quote unquote common knowledge that are, just either wrong or misunderstood. So do you want me to go into that?
Yes, please.
Okay. So the high level point is that a pitch is not a presentation. And so the way most entrepreneurs are trained, the way I was trained, was that you pull together your pitch deck and you've got, charts and graphs and data and evidence and logic and, testimonial, whatever. And so you've got your 56 slide PowerPoint presentation. And the idea is that in an hour presentation, you are going to pound an investor into submission on the logic and compelling, evidence behind your startup and why you're going to win. And, so that's how I was trained. And for me, it actually kind of worked when I was an entrepreneur. So I founded or co-founded or restarted 4 different tech companies. And, in the course of those companies, I raised something over $100 million. This is a long time ago, back when $100 million was a lot of money. But in any case, so then I became a VC. And now I'm being bombarded with pitches. And I'm thinking to myself, oh my God, these are terrible. Why are they terrible? and so I was talking with a friend of mine who runs a program for entrepreneurs. And, she was asking me to be a judge at a pitch competition. And, inadvertently, the first thing she heard out of my mouth was a groan. And she said, "Bill, wait a second. I thought you loved working with entrepreneurs. I thought you loved doing these pitch competitions." And I said, "Well, yeah, but I tell you, there's something we're doing wrong. We're just not teaching these entrepreneurs the right way to pitch." And so she was actually the original motivation in saying, "Okay, Bill, if you're so smart, why don't you figure out what's wrong?" And that's when I realized a couple of things. One, a pitch is not a presentation, which is to say, as an entrepreneur crafting your pitch, you don't have the luxury of crafting this narrative arc, that begins with a story and creates, a villain and a hero and all of this sort of storytelling narrative presentation stuff that presentation coaches teach you. And those are, God bless, all that stuff is great if you're doing a presentation. But when you're talking to an investor, you don't have the luxury of doing a presentation. One, investors don't have a lot of time. So if you don't grab them immediately, they're going to start, reading their email, or, they're going to turn to the shrimp bar, wherever you are, right? So you've got to figure out how to grab them immediately, one. And two, you've got to answer the questions in their head that are keeping them from listening to what you want to say, what they want versus what they want to hear. And so you've got to be able to read the investor, and you got to, think of it as a tennis match, right? It's, as opposed to a presentation, it's about, hitting the ball over the net and then seeing, how they react, and then figuring out where to place the next hit, right? So that's my metaphor for a pitch. It's more of a tennis match than it is a presentation. And then the other thing that I discovered when I became a VC is that, to my shock, it turns out VCs don't invest with their brains. I thought when I was an entrepreneur, again, it was about data and evidence and logic and PowerPoint slides. No. What I discovered when I crossed over was that VCs don't invest with their brains, they invest with their hearts. And then, most entrepreneurs, their immediate reaction when I tell them this is, wait a second, Bill, I didn't know that VCs had a heart. So in any case, but no, we know this to be true. All human beings are more motivated by what they want than what they should want, right? So they're motivated by what gets your heart beating faster, what gets your pulse racing, not by what logic and rational analytics teach you, right? So we know this to be true. This is the basis of behavioral economics, the basis of Freakonomics, but nobody sort of teaches this to entrepreneurs. So what's the lesson you have to learn as an entrepreneur? The lesson is you've got to figure out what it is about what you're doing that will get the investor to fall in love. What makes investors fall in love? Well, what makes investors fall in love is that you've got a compelling value proposition that enables you to do something that is going to generate enormous benefits for your target customers that nobody else can do. And that's the sort of thing that you've got to cut to right at the beginning. You can't sit down with an investor and tell them your life story and give them this narrative arc. You've got to cut right to the chase and tell them, this is what we do that nobody else on the planet can do, and here is my proof. And so that's, part of the point of getting to wow. You want them to say, wow, that's amazing. Wow is not an intellectual response, right? Wow is an emotional response. And so, that's what's going to separate you from the hundreds of other pitches that the VCs are listening to. And that's what you've got to do. You've got to elevate yourself above the mass of noise in the startup community. So, that's sort of the core of the whole point of getting to wow. Another really, really important point that we focused on is that I've learned, over the years that again, nobody taught me, is that most pitches are actually won or lost, not on the pitch part, but on the Q&A part. So entrepreneurs need to understand that it's not about your, planned presentation. It's about, the Q&A, the way you respond to questions and the answers you give to questions. So there are two aspects to that, right? So there's there's a stylistic component, the way you respond to questions. Are you defensive? Are you arrogant? Are you certain? Are you open? What is your demeanor when you respond to questions? And then, the content. Do you know the answers? Are you crisp and focused and concise? Or do you ramble on and on and on and on and avoid directly answering the question? So that raises the question of whether or not I just rambled on and on and on to your last question, right, Daphne?
Okay, here's my summary of what I hear you. It is like a dating competition plus job interview. That's how much attention that VC actually have. 5 minutes? And what questions most VCs will ask them? They should get ready and prepare for the answers.
Yeah. Okay, I'm gonna tell you a truth about venture capital that I probably should not reveal publicly, but it's important that entrepreneurs understand this, which is, what do you think is the median amount of time that a venture capitalist spends on your pitch deck?
I'd say less than 5 minutes.
So I hate to say this, but the median amount of time that VCs spend on pitch decks is 0. In other words, most VCs don't even open most pitch decks. And that's a big challenge, right, for entrepreneurs. Now, if you happen to be an entrepreneur and you can corner a VC at an event, then the question is, how much time do you have? And I would say, if you're lucky, you've got 20 or 30 seconds. And so what'll happen is, a VC who is, very busy and there are other entrepreneurs around or whatever, they're going to want to know within 20 or 30 seconds, is this a fit or not? Do I pass or not? And, after 20 or 30 seconds, the VC is going to say, oh, no matter what, the VC is going to say, oh, well, that's very interesting. I really wish you the best of luck at that. Or, maybe this is something we would be interested in. Let me know how let me know your progress, or, something like that, right? And then they want to move on. That's, what's going on out there. But if in 20 seconds, you can get them to wow, and they say, that's really interesting. Tell me more. That separates you from the rest of the pack. And so that's something that you have to appreciate as an entrepreneur in terms of the time challenge that investors have. So again, our job is to use other people's money to invest in companies that will best perform for our limited partners. So in our case, for Pegasus, our job is finding companies that are not only good financial return opportunities, but are also good strategic opportunities for our corporate partners. So we have sort of a double matrix filter that we have to run every company through. So, we have to scan literally tens of thousands of companies every year, on behalf of our 30 plus multinational corporate partners. And so we can't afford to spend time, as much as I love entrepreneurs, as much as I wish I could help every entrepreneur, I can't afford to spend time helping, every entrepreneur. So, that's why I'm happy to do, workshops with groups of entrepreneurs to try to share things like this. It's why I'm delighted to do, podcasts and radio shows to try to get the message out to entrepreneurs how they can be more successful. Unfortunately, I can't have coffee with every entrepreneur. I'd love to. I wish I could, but that's just the reality that venture capitalists have to manage.
You have been mentored for many angel investors and mature entrepreneurs. What is the biggest takeaway you would like them to know?
Well, in terms of mentoring angel investors, it's different than mentoring entrepreneurs. So, mentoring, working with angel investors, the most important thing that you bring to the table as an angel investor is it's not the money you're bringing. It's not even the expertise in an industry or technology that you're bringing. Sort of the most important thing that you bring to a startup is your network, and that network has got to include other sources of funding, whether they are other angels or venture capital firms or corporate investors or even potentially grant money, whatever. Your job as an angel investor is to make sure that your company does not run out of money. Because most entrepreneurs are not good at raising money. That's just, nobody is trained in raising money until they have to. And so serial entrepreneurs, they've been trained, they've learned. And so serial entrepreneurs tend to be better at raising money than first-time entrepreneurs. But as an angel investor, presumably you've made other investments, you've co-invested with other investors, you've worked in the venture community. Your highest value add as an investor is to make sure that your company does not run out of money. Now, you can do that in a variety of ways. You can do it by helping them generate revenues. You can do it by helping them manage their budgeting. That's sort of de minimis. You got to do that anyway. Or you can help them by bringing other investors to the table. And then in some rare cases, you've got some angels who are really, really good and smart about, sort of grant funding for certain types of sectors where grant funding is available. So that's my advice to angel investors. Yes, your expertise, your sector experience, and your money, they're all good, they're all valuable. But at the end of the day, I'll tell you, what I learned as an entrepreneur is I had some great investors. I had some literally world-class investors in my companies. And what I discovered is, in spite of them telling me how, they can help us with strategy, they can help us with, with connections, blah, blah, blah. By far, the most important thing that my investors did for me was make sure that we could do the next round of funding. So, strong emphasis on that to angel investors. In terms of, advice to entrepreneurs is make sure you understand the difference between a cool technology and a compelling value proposition. Unfortunately, most entrepreneurs, they fall in love with their product. They get, they have this vision of this product. Frequently, it's driven by something they've experienced in their lives or careers, and they think, nobody has solved this problem yet, and so somebody should solve this problem, and I've got this really, really cool way to solve this problem. And so they fall in love with this really cool way to solve this problem. And frequently, what happens is their particular sort of vision of how to solve the problem may apply to some people like them, but it doesn't represent what their target market really, really, really wants and needs. And so the point is, yes, you've got to come up with a solution, but make sure that solution generates compelling benefits to a target audience of customers. And so what that means is stop spending all of your time focused on perfecting your product and spend as much time as you can talking to your prospective customers and figuring out, how do I differentiate among prospective customers? And then, how do I message and communicate with prospective customers? And how do I connect with them and get them to understand the opportunity that I'm offering them? And how do I convert them into paying customers? And so spending time with customers and understanding the dynamics of your sales cycle is a huge miss by so many entrepreneurs. In spite of all the time we spend, teaching them design thinking and teaching them lean startup and teaching them customer centric, it's just human nature. Entrepreneurs fall in love with their product and they spend so much more time on their product than they do on their customer base. And so that's my sort of, again, biggest advice to startup entrepreneurs. So then the related advice goes back to the point that I made before, which is that ultimately your ability to scale is a function of people. And so it's, the people include your co-founders, the rest of your team, your advisors, and your investors. And so, each of those has a critically important role, but in terms of people and team, one of the biggest mistakes, I guess, I see startup entrepreneurs making, which is back to, my advice and sort of tips for entrepreneurs. A lot of entrepreneurs are, type A personalities, and, they are very driven, and sometimes that drive turns them into control freaks. And so, we've all met control freaks in our lives, right? And so sometimes a control freak personality, comes across as a driven personality. The two are not mutually exclusive. But what happens is control freaks wind up bottlenecking their company because they're not willing to sort of trust their co-founders and their team and hand off responsibility for executing to other people. They keep on wanting to control it, and that limits their potential for scale. It also limits the willingness and enthusiasm of their team to be part of this company. Most of us don't really enjoy being controlled by a control freak, right? and so, and then at the end of the day, most control freaks wind up burning out. They wind up, just because they are such control freaks, they wind up burning out, to the detriment of everyone around the table. And so, that sort of the other dimension of my own experience and advice to entrepreneurs is, make sure you're in touch with your team and you get the conversation going to make sure that you're not being a control freak. For the most part, control freaks have a tendency not to ask their team if they are control freaks, right? Sort of the definition of a control freak is that, I know best, right? And so, this goes into the sort of related issue of, do you listen? And, everybody's been taught this since kindergarten, right? Since kindergarten, every person is told, it's important to listen. That's why you have 2 ears and 1 mouth, right? Everybody's heard that, right? But, but control freak entrepreneurs, it's really hard for them to listen. And so they're so out of the habit of listening that they don't even bother to ask. And so, as an entrepreneur, it's really, really important that you ask. So that's my other sort of general advice to entrepreneurs. I do have another aspect of entrepreneurship that I offer as advice is in a workshop I do called the top 10 VC secrets that entrepreneurs need to know, but they don't share with entrepreneurs, right? And one of them was, again, this it's sort of tongue in cheek, but I try to make the point that, believe it or not, one of the secrets of venture capital is that VCs do not invest in smart entrepreneurs. And people look at me and say, Bill, you're crazy, of course. And that's not so. I mean, some of my favorite portfolio companies are led by smart people, right? Well, what I mean by this is that because of the way our educational system works, people who are sort of smart, right? Who are those people? They're the ones that got the good grades. They did all their homework. They did 100% of the tests. They got good scores. They went to good universities, right? They're smart, right? Right? So one of the problems with, again, our educational system is we label people smart because they perform well in this very, very narrow domain called academic, work, right? And you get into the real world, how applicable is that? Well, in the real world, there isn't an answer sheet to the test, right? There isn't an answer sheet. And there was no whatever. There was if you read there was no book you could read to make sure you had the right answers for everything in the real world, right? We try to write the books, so you're an entrepreneur, and there's a challenge that you are facing. Oh my gosh, this is happening. What do we do? So someone who is smart, when faced with that challenge, someone who is smart thinks, well, I am smart, so that must mean I have the answer to this challenge. I must have the answer, otherwise I wouldn't be considered smart. And so smart people, who have been overachievers in school, have a tendency to say, okay, here's the answer. Now, that's a problem, right? Because almost certainly, there's a good percentage chance that that is wrong because, that's the way the real world is. So we don't want smart. What we want is savvy. What we want is savvy. And so what's the difference between smart and savvy? Okay, this is a, sort of nuance of language, but savvy people are the ones, they probably got B's, in school, but, they got through school, they got through, they played sports, they did all these things, they had fun, right? But savvy people, when if confronted with a challenge, a savvy person says, well, yeah, I don't know the answer to that, but I know how to figure it out. So let's do this and let's check that out and let's ask that person and let's try this. So a savvy person is the kind of person who is the entrepreneur who says, okay, team, let's try to figure this out, because I'll tell you, I don't have the answer. And that's the kind of personality you want, because almost certainly no one person all the time is going to have all the right answers. So you want someone who is willing to admit that they don't have the right answer and who is savvy about, all their lives, they've figured out how to get through, right? Hopefully without cheating, right? So, that's another problem we've got. But so that's what we want. We want savvy entrepreneurs, not smart entrepreneurs. Now, every once in a while, you come across a savvy entrepreneur who is also actually smart, but, and so they behave the way we want them to behave, in the savvy way, not in the I know all the answers way. But to go back to the book and my point about the importance of Q&A, so the importance of the question and answer session is if we notice that the entrepreneur, seems to believe that they have all the right answers and, projects this, well, I'm smart, I went to Yale, and so therefore I must have the right answer, right? Then, our kind of reaction is, okay, let's back away from this guy. So that's, sort of another sort of framing that's kind of outside the norm of advice that entrepreneurs get, from books and from, blogs. So
you like open-minded people.
Yes, right. Well, okay. So here's the other sort of nuance here, right? The other nuance here is frequently, we have this experience with entrepreneurs that, okay, I'm an entrepreneur trying to, desperately trying to raise money from those VCs. And, their attitude is, that's a big VC. And, I'm lucky that I got the opportunity to pitch the big VC. And so a lot of entrepreneurs, they defer to the VCs, or they abdicate responsibility for the process to the VC. So they assume when they talk to a VC and the VC says, oh, great, yeah, let's talk next week. That the VC is going to reach out to them and schedule a meeting and, or even respond to their email or whatever. One of the important things about being an entrepreneur is that you've got to drive the process. You cannot abdicate to a VC, to a customer. You've got to be the driver to make sure that things happen. And so, I frame that as one of my top 10 secrets. I frame that as, VCs don't invest in entrepreneurs who are nice. We invest in entrepreneurs who are driven. And so now again, every once in a while, you have a driven entrepreneur who is also nice, right? Every once in a while. But I'll take driven over nice, 99 times out of 100, right? And so, if you can be driven and nice, God bless you, right? But you've got to appreciate that the only way things get done in this world is by people who are driven to get things done. And so that's, again, an important learning that I try to impress upon my entrepreneur friends.
You have worn so many different hats. Which part of your career path did you enjoy the most and why?
That part of my career I enjoy the most is today. So being here with you, Daphne, and having this conversation, is the most fun I've ever had. So I have been just very, very, very lucky, and I'm just very lucky. I've just had the opportunity to always get to do what I want to do, and what I want to do is work on innovation, sort of work on, in new technologies that are going to make a dent in the universe, work with entrepreneurs, work with investors, work with corporates on their innovation strategy. I love doing workshops. I love negotiating deals. I am just very, 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 very lucky. And, I'm there have been some hiccups along the way. So that's, one of the things that we like to say in Silicon Valley is that in Silicon Valley, we embrace failure. And so, one of the sort of tropes about Silicon Valley is the importance of experimentation and trial and error, and go for it. And if you crash and burn, that's okay. You learn from your mistakes and you get your, whatever, right? And so, the sort of secret or whatever of Silicon Valley is this tolerance for experimentation, trial and error, and and anybody can make something, can make something happen. But very early in my career, my first company, I'm a grad student at Stanford, start up a software company out of graduate school. This is a long time ago, before it was fashionable for grad students to start companies. But so I started this company and it takes off like a rocket ship. And I'm thinking, boy, this entrepreneurship thing is pretty easy. I don't know what people are talking about. It seems pretty straightforward to me, right? And then, one day, it blows up, spectacular crash and burn. And so I will tell you, at that moment, I didn't feel as though I was embraced by Silicon Valley. So in terms of, Silicon Valley embracing failure, but what was true was, in fact, that, I got to, dust myself off and, pick myself up, and I, spin the story a little bit, and, and I got to go do it again. And so my second company, we took public. Boom, right? So I thought I knew everything. But, my third company was the most eye-wateringly cool technology I had ever seen. It was amazing. These guys out of the Stanford Research Institute, SRI, they came up with this incredibly cool technology. And I just said, this is the future. There's no question about it. And we took that company and we ran it into a brick wall at 500 miles an hour. We were so sure. So yes. So I've had some stumbles. there have been some stumbles, but here and there. But fortunately, again, I've just been super lucky in terms of the opportunities that I've had and the people I've had the opportunity to work with and what I get to do every day. And so I love the entrepreneurship, starting new things part, of Silicon Valley. And I will tell you, the great thing about Pegasus Tech Ventures and our platform is that we get to invent new things as part of this platform. And so that gives me satisfaction. Sort of, I get to meet, amazing entrepreneurs every day and see amazing technologies, every day, and learn new things every day, and then try new things and do new things, every day. So, one of the things that I get to do is this thing right here called Startup World Cup, and which was something that we started up about 7 years ago. We thought, wouldn't it be clever to, connect with these different innovation ecosystems around the world, and run a competition, and then have the winners of those regional competitions come to Silicon Valley to compete for a big prize. We wanted to make it like the biggest prize on the planet. So we made it a $1 million grand prize. We started with 15 cities around the world. And now we've done over 70 cities. And this year we're going to do at least 50 of those cities. And then bring the winners back. And this is an advertisement for the Startup World Cup Grand Finale, which is December 1st, 2023 at the Union Square Hilton. Come on down, sign up for the Grand Finale. It'll be a big, we bring in a bunch of sort of luminaries from the tech community to do a conference in the morning, and then we do the competition in the afternoon. It's a huge event. We're hoping to have over 3,000 people this year. But that's a gas, right? I get to have fun with that. So I get to, I don't go to all 50 events, but, I get to go to several of these events and meet people all over the world, and meet with the entrepreneurs in the community and the investors in the community and the corporates and the government and all that. So I have I'm very lucky.
I'll be sure I'll be there in Union Square for the
Yes.
final finale. Yes. And
Yes,
you're always
right.
the most wanted person at every event I've ever been to when I see you there.
Well, yeah, I have to learn the art of sneaking out the back door. That's the, but no, obviously, I just love, I love talking with entrepreneurs, et cetera, at these events. I get tremendous energy out of entrepreneurs. So that's part of my great good fortune.
Thank you so much, Bill. I have great time with you here to learn so many secrets and all the excitements. You told us the story about your past, other people's stories. It's just so much fun to hear.
Well, my pleasure. And I appreciate the opportunity to be with you. And, please let me know if you want to do something like this again.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you.
Okay. Take care.